Caught my wife cheating and destroyed her lover's marriage. I am completely lost and don't know what to do. There were signs, but I ignored them. I was blinded by love and never could have imagined this happening to me, especially not with her, my wife and best friend for nearly 20 years. I work in another city and wasn't supposed to return home until this evening. Tomorrow, we were supposed to go on a 2-day trip. Work was calm, so I came home early yesterday afternoon. The trip was meant to give us a chance to be alone after a busy summer spent with family and friends. When I arrived, there was a truck in my driveway that I didn't recognize. A neighbor had recently asked me how I liked the new truck, but I thought he was mistaken and ignored the comment. As soon as I saw the truck, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. I loved my wife and trusted her completely, but this feeling wouldn't leave me. I crept to the window of our bedroom. It was open, and I could hear them. As I got closer and looked inside, my worst fears were confirmed. They were there, completely naked, on my bed. I simply walked away, fighting the urge to do something I would regret. I can't stop thinking about what comes next. I went to our family cabin and drank everything I could find all night. Today, I went home intending to confront her, but I changed my mind. I'm not ready. All I feel is anger, and all I can think about is violence. I know I'm not in the right state of mind to see her. I returned to the cabin, and now I'm staring at a bottle of rum, 1.8 liters, for the past hour. I want to drink and forget everything, but I'm afraid I'll lose control and do something reckless. I understand that this is a critical moment in my life, and the decisions I make in the coming days will shape my future. That's why I'm here. I need help. I'm not ready to talk to family or friends, so I'm turning to strangers on the internet. Update 1. The amount of support and advice I've received is incredible. I even got emotional realizing how many kind people are willing to help a complete stranger. This has given me some hope when I needed it most. The downside of all this support is that I'm struggling to respond to everyone. So, first of all, a huge thank you to everyone for your kind words and helpful advice. It really means a lot to me. I've noticed a few recurring questions and comments, so I want to clarify the situation and share a brief update. Today, I'm feeling much better. The pain has almost entirely subsided. I still feel like I've been punched in the gut, but otherwise, I'm beginning to look to the future. It's only been 2 days, so it feels strange, like the calm before the storm, or maybe I'm just surprisingly resilient. Answers to common questions. We don't have children. We were planning to start a family soon. We recently sold our house and were preparing to move closer to my work once the new owners took possession. I plan to discreetly thank my neighbor for his unintentional tip-off. Signs I ignored. She started texting late at night, which was unusual for her. She regularly went out with friends after work, which was also out of character. I was happy she was becoming more social, but in hindsight, it was suspicious. She claimed to attend weekly yoga classes but hadn't paid for them. It turned out that one of the instructors was her coworker, and she was helping with organization and cleaning instead. She didn't seem flexible enough for someone regularly practicing yoga. We received calls from unknown numbers that hung up when I answered. Normally, we answer each other's phones if it's closer, but these calls stopped once I picked up. When my brother arrived, we had a long and serious talk. He's always been my true best friend, and I realized I need to remember that he'll always be there for me without judgment, just as I've been there for him. He shows me what true friendship looks like, even though we sometimes argue. Since I was supposed to be home last night, I decided to respond to my wife's message. At work, we're not allowed to use phones, so it made sense to her that I could only text. I told her I needed to visit a remote site for my company and wouldn't be able to call until the weekend. I said she should cancel all bookings, and I'd rebook them later. She suggested taking her best friend to the romantic winery hotel I had reserved for us. I knew she wasn't referring to the friend she wanted me to think of. I told her I'd already transferred the booking to my brother and his wife, as it was non-refundable, and they promised to pay me back in a month. This morning, I cancelled all reservations except for the romantic suite. My brother and I will go instead. Fortunately, the hotel allowed us to swap the honeymoon suite for a room with separate beds. There's a beautiful lake and boat rentals nearby, so we'll try to make the best of it. My brother and I have had plans brewing for some free weekends, and I don't have to write to or speak with her for a few days. This removes part of the stress and gives me more time to think. At this point, I'm leaning toward divorce. Honestly, I don't see any other option. My brother supports me in this but suggested taking a couple of weeks to pause and consult someone first. His wife knows a family counselor who agreed to speak with me on Monday. I don't think it will change my mind, but at least it might help me untangle the chaos in my head. I also followed some commenters' advice and started consulting lawyers to prepare for what seems inevitable. I want to handle this wisely. I never thought she was the type of person who could deceive me, but since she cheated, I believe I must prepare for anything. I'll try to make the most of this weekend. Update 2. A lot has happened over the past few days. I'll start with the less important things. My brother and I drove nearly 5 hours to the Vineyard Hotel. I'm incredibly grateful he was with me during this time. Most of the ride felt like a heartfelt conversation that truly helped me clear my mind. After venting for most of the drive, I wanted some time alone, and he went out for dinner. I stayed in the room while he brought back some food for me. He also managed to rent a boat for the next day. On Saturday, we went fishing. The hotel owner knew about our plans and kindly packed a cooler with food and drinks as a way to turn their romantic package into something practical for two brothers. It was a thoughtful gesture. The fishing itself wasn't great, we caught a couple of trout but had to release them because they were too small. The hotel snacks came in handy. We finished fishing by noon and then visited wineries and farm stands, buying food and crates of wine for Matt's wife, Jen. That evening, we went for the biggest tomahawk steak we could find. On Sunday, we drove back to Matt's home, about an hour from mine. When we arrived, Jen was there. We opened a bottle of chilled white wine together, and that officially marked the end of my weekend. Jen shared that while we were away, she decided to keep an eye on my wife. She told me that the man was at my house on Friday night and stayed until Saturday morning. Jen drove to my house just as he was leaving. She followed him to his apartment and found out where he lives. My wife spent Saturday evening at his place, the same time she was texting me love messages and saying she missed me. Jen split her time between visiting relatives in my city and watching my wife. She even caught my wife leaving his apartment on Sunday morning, taking photos of them hugging and kissing before she got into her car. I don't want to see those photos. This was the final straw for me. I don't think I'll ever be able to trust her again. If she can switch so easily between loving messages to me and being with another man, I see no future for us. That said, I've decided not to make rash decisions based on emotions. I need to stay calm and clear-headed. Jen also told me that Sharon, the counselor she found for me, would join them for dinner. Sharon has never met my wife, and this was my first time meeting her. Sharon turned out to be a kind person, and we got along well. After dinner, Sharon and I went for a walk around Matt's neighborhood to walk the dogs and talk privately. Sharon was incredibly helpful. She listened to me without judgment and made me feel like I didn't have to keep my guard up all the time. It was therapeutic. Even though I feel comfortable with my brother, this felt different. It was exactly what I needed. That's also why I like sharing everything here. It's a way to vent that helps me untangle the chaos in my head. Our walk lasted about an hour, and the only real advice Sharon gave me was not to delay talking to my wife. She said the longer I wait, the harder it will be to address. She emphasized that clarity is what I need most, and my wife is the only one who can provide it. Later that night, Jen and Matt offered to let me stay with them for as long as I needed. I know Matt and I have our limits when it comes to long-term cohabitation, so I spoke to my boss, who arranged company housing for me. I've stayed there before every other week but had to leave on weekends. Now, he's made it so I can stay for several months if necessary. I've decided to schedule another session with Sharon this week since I found our first meeting helpful. She agreed. On Sunday evening, I spent time lying in bed, thinking about how to approach this conversation with my wife. It was difficult because even imaginary scenarios in my head filled me with anger and sadness. I decided I would improvise. Usually, I handle pressure well. Yesterday, I woke up, said goodbye to Matt and Jen, and drove home. While driving, I thought about what I would do if he was there when I arrived. Then I realized that would likely put me back into the same angry state I was in a few days ago. I decided to just drive past the house first. Neither his truck nor my wife's car was there. I went inside and packed up the essentials I didn't want to leave behind, mostly photos and family heirlooms. I loaded them into my car and drove to this man's apartment. Her car wasn't there, but his truck was. I decided to text her to ask where she was. She replied that she was grocery shopping. My trust in her is so shattered that I drove past the store to confirm she was really there. I hate admitting this, but it's the only way I can feel certain about anything now. I texted her again and told her to come home because we needed to talk. She asked, "What's going on?" I just said she should prepare for an honest conversation and turned off my phone. She came home 15 minutes later. When she walked in, she tried to hug and kiss me like she always does. I turned away. She asked again, "What's going on?" That's when I told her she needed to start being honest with me. She acted like she didn't understand and claimed she didn't know what I was talking about. I told her, "If you can't be honest, I'm leaving." She started to panic and asked, "Are you talking about yoga?" I thought that was an odd response but decided to press further. I asked what she meant, and she admitted she hadn't been going to yoga. Here's a summary of the rest of the conversation. "If you weren't at yoga, then where were you?" "I was just walking to relax because I've been really stressed lately." "Why are you so stressed, and why did you lie about it?" "I've been overwhelmed with preparing for the move, and I didn't know how to tell you." "So you decided to lie? Why couldn't you just say you were going for a walk to relieve stress?" "I didn't want to lie. I was afraid my stress would stress you out." "I don't feel stressed." "I think you're still not telling me the whole truth." "What do you mean?" "I think you're lying about more than just skipping yoga. Be honest." "I don't know what else to say." "Are you talking about last weekend when you said you went out drinking with friends and came home late? Is that really what happened, or was that a lie too?" "I did go out drinking that night, but no, I wasn't with my best friend like I said." "Then who were you with?" "No one. I was just drinking alone." "You're drinking alone now? Maybe you have a problem. We can discuss that later. This is your last chance to be honest, or I'm leaving." I don't know what else to say. At that point, I stood up and left. Usually, when we argue, I drive around for a while to cool off, so she probably thought this was the same. But then she realized I had taken my clothes, toiletries, and Xbox. That's when she started calling me non-stop. I told her she had a chance to be honest, but she didn't take it, so I had nothing else to say. She begged and pleaded for me to come back to talk in person. She said she had no idea why I was so upset or what I thought she had done. She repeated that she loved me and would never hurt me. It hurt to hear her say those words because they used to comfort me without question. Now, they felt like a blunt, jagged knife tearing my heart apart. I couldn't take it anymore, so I hung up. She called about 40 more times before I was ready to answer again. This time, she asked, "Have you talked to Karen?" Her best friend. I asked why she was asking, and she said, "Come home. I don't want to discuss this over the phone." I agreed, drove around a bit to calm down, and then went home. The conversation went like this. "I assume you've talked to Karen?" "No. A few weeks ago, while you were at work, we went out for drinks. A couple of guys started buying us drinks, and we just played along. When we were leaving, one of them tried to kiss me. I pulled away immediately and told him I was married. I felt terrible about it and wanted to tell you, but I was an idiot and decided to keep it from you. Karen slept with another guy and, without my permission, gave his friend my number. He's texted me a few times, but I never replied. Can I see your phone?" "Yes." She showed me her phone. It was completely empty, only messages from me and her mom. She never deletes her texts, so this was unusual. I checked her photos, and they were clean too. But when I looked in the recently deleted folder, I found a picture of a man I didn't recognize. Who's this? That's the guy who tried to kiss me. It's hard to know where to begin. I'll recount the events as they happened and how I've processed them since then. After leaving her, I sat on the tailgate of my truck in a nearby park, eating my lunch and trying to figure out my next steps. Memories of overlooked red flags started to flood my mind. For example, one weekend, I worked late and went to bed early. My wife went out to a club with her friends. I woke up at 4 a.m., and she still wasn't home. I called her several times, but she didn't answer. Half an hour later, she called back, asking me to pick her up. When I got there, she explained that they couldn't get a taxi, so a couple of guys her friend knew offered them a ride but insisted on stopping at their place first. At their house, her married friend went into a room with one of the guys, leaving my wife waiting. She claimed she looked for her friend for a while, then gave up and drank in the kitchen with some roommates. She said she didn't hear her phone ringing. We argued, and she expressed disgust at her friend's behavior, vowing to end the friendship. I thought that issue was resolved. Another time, she went to another city for a girls' night to watch movies and drink in pajamas. Around 1 a.m., she called to say goodnight. During our 20-minute conversation, I heard a male voice in the background. When I asked about it, she first denied hearing anything but eventually admitted one of her friends had brought a couple of guys along. She insisted everyone was unhappy about it and assured me she wouldn't put herself in such a situation again. Looking back, that promise was a lie. As these memories came back, I decided to give her one last chance. I turned on my phone, and she called almost immediately. She was crying, begging me to come home. I agreed. When I arrived, she ran to me, sobbing, apologizing over and over. I asked her what she was sorry for. It took her 5 minutes to calm down enough to speak. She admitted she lied about the man who tried to kiss her. She said, "We all went back to his house that night. We fooled around." Even hearing that, I felt the room closing in on me, like millions of voices were screaming in my ears. I had a panic attack, washed my face with cold water, and tried to regain control. "What did you do?" I asked. She hesitated but eventually confessed, "He used his fingers on me, and I gave him oral." "Is that all?" "Yes." I told her I wasn't playing games. Either she told me everything right then, or it would be the last time we spoke. She broke down again and admitted, "We met up again and had sex. I'm so sorry. I love you. I'll do anything to fix this. It only happened once. Please give me a chance." She then revealed that the affair lasted nearly a month while I was away for work. She added that the man is married and planning to divorce his wife. "Does he know you're married?" I asked. "Yes. If he's divorcing because his marriage is falling apart, do you think our marriage will fall apart too?" "Did you tell him that?" "No, I don't think our marriage is falling apart. I hate myself. Please don't leave me. I can fix this. I'll do anything you want. If you were in my place, or even his wife's, what would you want?" I asked. "To know the truth. To know I can be trusted." "Then fix it," I said. She asked if I wanted her to call his wife. I told her to do whatever she thought was right. She tried calling but got no answer. A few minutes later, her phone rang. It was him. The number was saved as Karen from work, but I immediately knew it was him. I answered, "Is this the man sleeping with my wife?" He stammered, "I think I dialed the wrong number." "No, you didn't. I'm her husband. She has something to tell you." I handed her the phone, and she told him, "It's over. I've told my husband everything. Don't ever contact me again." I took the phone back. Before he could hang up, I asked, "What divorce lawyer are you hiring? Because I'll be doing the same." He panicked, insisting he wasn't divorcing his wife. "Good. Then I'll talk to her, I said. He begged me not to ruin his marriage, claiming it was just a mistake. I replied, "You ruined mine. It's only fair your wife knows too." He swore he'd tell her himself. I made him promise and hung up. I asked my wife if she knew where his wife worked. She did. I told her to call and ask for her. When his wife called back, my wife told her everything. The woman was silent for a minute, then hung up. Since then, nearly a month has passed. I've avoided all contact with my wife. She, her friends, and her family have bombarded me with calls and messages. Everyone has their own argument or plea for me to forgive her. Her father is the only one who told me to do what's best for me and assured me he'd love me like a son no matter what. Reading his message was the first time I cried since this all began. Tomorrow, I have a session with Sharon, my therapist, and a meeting with a divorce lawyer on Thursday. I think I know where this is heading, but nothing feels certain yet. Thank you to everyone who shared their stories and support. It helps more than I can say to know I'm not alone. Please share your thoughts on my story. And if you've made it this far, take care of yourselves.